Hey, I'm Shane from Shane Law. I'm here today with John, one of the attorneys here at Shane Law. John's primarily in the brain and concussion group, but he does also deal with serious car accidents. Today we're talking about one of his recent client victories. John, tell us how this accident occurred.
Sure. So Shane, this accident occurred when a negligent driver impacted our client at about 40 miles per hour. Massive damage to the defendant's car. Not as much damage to our client's car, but the forces were still the same. 40 miles per hour is a lot.
And how did they hit the car? Was it a rear end collision? Was it head on?
Rear end collision.
Rear end collision. Okay, so 40 miles per hour right behind. I mean, right comes to mind. I think about whiplash. I think of back and neck issues. What happened here?
Yeah, so immediately there was whiplash, which we see so commonly in rear end accidents where the head just goes forward, and then just as fast as it goes forward, it whips back into that seat. And unfortunately, in this case for our client, that caused immediate neck injuries and also a brain injury.
What happened here? I mean, I hear neck injury, I hear brain injury. I mean, I'm thinking, what kind of treatment were you able to do for this person?
Sure. So besides the initial treatment that the client did themselves, getting the client with a specialist was of the utmost importance. At a rear end of this speed, we knew that a specialist, at the very least, just to be safe, was going to want to examine our client and just check off to make sure something big wasn't missed. And we were very glad that the client was on board with seeking additional care, because sure enough, there's very serious long-term permanent neck injuries in the form of herniations, which is a permanent injury to the spine and the neck. But also we found that there was vestibular injuries and mild brain injuries.
Yeah, so what's a vestibular injury? What's that mean in English?
So a vestibular injury is a type of injury that you can sustain in like the ear and brain area that will impact your balance. It can cause dizziness. It can actually even affect your eye movement. A lot of times clients with vestibular injuries will indicate that they have blurred vision, double vision, or are having what's called vertigo, where it feels like they're losing their balance.
When we were talking, you pointed to your ear, but we're talking about a whiplash case. How does that happen? How do I hurt my ear? You know what I mean? Vestibular, I think ear. How do I hurt that with whiplash? Is it just the brain? Is that what it is, or?
Yeah, it can be a part of the brain. It can also be where you impact on the seat. But it is typically categorized and diagnosed by a neurologist as a brain injury.
Okay, so this client had this vestibular injury. What else did she have going on in the head injury?
So there was definitely symptoms that affected the vision and dizziness. And if you have ever had dizziness or blurred vision, you understand just how debilitating that can be. And your ability to work, your ability to interact with people socially. So this poor client had to make almost a year plus 2 years of treatment their entire life, because in order to get better and get their body back, they had to treat religiously and make sure they made all their appointments, and they were very compliant with their treatment.
We've talked in the past about once those symptoms cross the 6-month mark, they're permanent, more or less. Was she able to treat these symptoms and learn to minimize them?
Yeah, so the treatment path was wonderful for the client. Compliant, did what needed to be done. So the way that helps with the long-term improvement is something that we've talked about before, where if you're compliant and doing all the brain therapy that's being recommended, you usually see better outcomes. And when me and this client last spoke, just before settlement, just about the injuries, it seemed that they had settled and wasn't getting worse. And that is sometimes the best you can hope for, is you get the blurriness down, you get the dizziness down to levels where that person was good enough to go back to work.
Okay.
Resume life. It was a new normal, but they were definitely able to resume life, become a functional member of society again, and that's really what they were shooting for.
Okay. How did the insurance company take everything? Were you able to get it resolved?
We were, Shane, and it was a fight, unfortunately. We see a lot where these insurance companies, it's the brain injury is unfortunately sometimes called the invisible injury. And that's because you can't see stuff. It's not like a broken arm where the bone is sticking out where everyone is just like, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So we really have to prove this invisible injury through great note taking, great medical records, seeing the correct specialist. Thankfully, we had all this here. We had a great brain doctor that the client went to out of state because they lived out of state, and were able to get the treatment that they needed to improve. And what that means is that it made it much harder for the insurance adjuster to do what they typically do, which is that your client didn't sustain an injury, it's something else, or maybe they're just sad or depressed, or, we don't believe that they have this. And, that's kind of how this started off. But they gave a decent-ish, initial offer, but it wasn't nearly enough for what we needed. So unfortunately, I had to, spend a lot of my time educating the adjuster. And I do this all the time, simply because sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So it's my job as the attorney representing these brain injured clients to provide the information to these insurance adjusters. And in this case, I had to get supervisors and, higher up people involved to review the case. Because at one point, they were mentioning that the brain injury was caused by some sort of, issue way in the client's past that it wasn't any known cause of a brain injury whatsoever. And at that point, I realized that, we needed to pull someone else in to get a more advanced set of eyes on this. And that's what we did. And once we're able to kind of convince the carrier that this isn't going away.
Yeah.
This brain injury is here. We have clear diagnosis. You've seen all the notes. You've seen the family members. Their offer increased to a point where a settlement range that we were very happy to settle at, both us and the client.
John, it sounds like she was lucky to have somebody who was super knowledgeable on brain injuries and somebody willing to not take their first offer and to, like you say, work on educating the adjuster and the insurance company that, hey, this is a brain injury, these are the effects, and it's not going to get better kind of deal, and that she can't fake it, right? Because like you say, it's the invisible injury. So it sounds like she was super lucky, and thanks for getting this client a great settlement. We appreciate it. For our listeners, hit like and subscribe for more client victories from Shane Smithall. And remember, if you're in pain, call Shane, 980-999-9999.
In pain, so I call Shane, 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.